Greetings. If you are here for the first time, welcome. If you are a returning visitor, thank you for coming back. I appreciate it. I'm not going to make any jokes about it. Just thank you for coming back. In either case, please hit a like, a subscribe, a thumbs up. Tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell anybody you want. I want to do something a little bit different today. First of all, I'm wearing my travel hat, as you may notice, because we're going to be traveling a little bit. And you don't have to make a hotel reservation for this one. You don't even have to put gas in your car or charge up your electric car. This one's going to involve only you and your mind. The world we live in today as older folks is not the best from my personal experience and other folks I know. It's a little bit hard, it's challenging. And the world today seems to be a much more disjointed place than we're used to. So the trip we're going to take today is only going to require, like I said, your mind and your willingness. People say to me all the time, you know, Stan, you have a great memory. You seem to live in the past. I do live in the past. And somebody asked me recently, why do I keep looking to the past? Because I had a better time then. I was more aware. I was a different person. Not necessarily better or worse, just different. And I know where I was and I know how it ended. I don't know how today ends. I don't know how tomorrow is going to start or end. So sometimes taking a trip to the past may work, and that's exactly what I'm proposing to you today. So find your favorite chair. Maybe have a cold beverage next to you or a warm beverage, whatever you like. Make yourself comfortable. And put aside anything you possibly can as far as distractions. It's not going to be that long, but I think you might enjoy it. So let's take a little trip back in time, your time. 30 years, 35 years, pick whatever you want. There were no iPhones, no distractions, no tablets, no cell phones at all to speak of. Turn off the TV. You can be distracted by the nonsense a little bit later. Maybe just watch this, and after I'm done with you on this and you know how to do it, you don't even have to watch me anymore doing this. So what I propose is get rid of all the distractions you possibly can. Even if you can go into another room, go to the beach, go out front, go someplace where nobody's going to bother you for a while. And turn the clock back to a time, like say 30, 35, 40 years ago. You're at the dinner table. You're at the dinner table with your kids. They're not scrolling constantly on their cell phone. You don't have TVs going on in every room. You're sitting there with your kids or maybe your wife, loved ones, and you're having a conversation. And you're talking to each other. Not at each other, necessarily. They're not being distracted by Facebook and Instagram on their phones. There are no phones at the table 35 years ago. Didn't happen. So you're forced to talk to each other. How was school? How was work? You were going to be playing a game today with your team. How'd you do? You spoke to each other. When was the last time you did that recently? There's no TVs going on. Maybe you had a TV at the dinner table off to the side there, and you were watching the evening news. It was Cronkite or Huntley Brinkley or whoever. There were only 3 stations there then. Maybe a couple of locals on top of that, but it was mostly 3 network stations. They tried to inform you. They tried to teach you a little bit. Now it's just noise. I don't care what station you're watching on cable, on DirecTV or any of those. It's just noise. And the noise is affecting our lives. And it's not necessarily promoting harmony in the world, I've noticed. So you're back at the table. You're talking to each other. Maybe getting into an occasional fight. You fight with your kids, you fight with your wife, you fight with everybody. But generally there's some love involved. So you take the time to do it and hope it'll resolve and you'll learn something from it and you won't have to repeat it again. You're going into another room. The kids are going off to do homework. Remember when the kids did homework and it wasn't done by AI, or the teachers actually tried to teach, and you could do math in your head and you could read with some degree of literacy? And to get a high school diploma, you actually had to prove that you were worthy of a high school diploma. Or maybe a GED is what you got. No harm in it. It's basically the equivalent. You had to know how to communicate, read, write, arithmetic, as the old saying goes. That was pretty good. Your kids are off doing your homework. You and your wife are doing whatever you're doing. Maybe she's talking to you about how was work. Are you saying to her, how was your day? You had some stuff to do. Did you get your stuff done today? And she says, yeah, I did. And she'll ask you about the vacation that you got planned in the summer, maybe. And you had to book it yourself, or you got a travel agent, or maybe had the experience of being there. You weren't reading all the stuff online that was probably not true anyway. So you did that. You do that, you talk about it. It's something to look forward to. And maybe you, as the evening wore on, you're watching some TV. Maybe there's some good programs on then. But at night, maybe just before you're wrapping it up, you maybe watched The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. And you talked about it the next day at the water cooler. You know you did. Johnny was a great host for a lot of people. And he gave you the political sense of the nation and some good jokes about what was going on. You saw some movie stars and TV stars, sports stars, and Dick Cavett was an alternative, and some of the other alternatives, maybe David Frost, although I don't know why. Anyway, early in the evening, maybe there was a ball game you watched, and the announcers actually had some personality and knew what they were talking about. And not every third word was a commercial for a product. And some of the announcers at the baseball level, which is where I watched, you had Mel Allen, Red Barber, Vince Scully, Jack Buck, Prince in Pittsburgh, I forgot his first name, Bob Prince, Harry Carey. They told you the story of the game and gave you all the facts and figures, and they sometimes usually did it alone. They didn't have 5 men in the booth, 4X players, and God knows who else trying to explain to you the launch velocity of the pitch. Now, my question is, why do I need to know how hard the ball was hit? It was an out. If it's an out, I don't care how hard it was hit. And if it was a home run, I just cared that it cleared the fence. I don't need to know the biological temperature of the ball or the pitcher or the manager sitting on the bench and all these other worthless stats that have been shoved down our throats. And if you're a football fan, comparable was true in that game, although I am not a football fan or basketball or anything like that. Now, what else could you be doing? Well, on the weekend or after work, if you needed to buy something, you went to a store. You remember stores? Remember malls? You go into Sears or any other major retailer. In New York, we had Corvettes. I don't know who the other retailers were. I grew up on Long Island in New York, so we had Corvettes and some of the others, but I don't remember any. Service merchandise was a factor back then. And you walked into a store and you looked at the product, and if it was something small, maybe you put it in your hand, and you look it over. Yeah, this looks good. You went, you paid for it. Maybe looked at other items on before you left the store. And you took it home with you. And that was all done within a couple hours. Talk about beating Amazon's next day or 2-day delivery. You took it home with you. You probably interacted with a salesperson. Remember salespeople? Some of them were lousy, some of them were pushy. But you could talk to them, and sometimes they even knew the product they were talking about. You got it home, and you showed it to whoever, if it was something that you wanted them to see that you bought. And wow, look at that. Hey, good luck. I hope it works out for you. This and that. And if it didn't, the next day you took it back, or the day after you took it back, you didn't have to wait for authorization to return it from Amazon or whoever. And you went to the store, you did it. And if you went to an area where there was more than one store, you went to other stores. You maybe had a snack there, had dinner out there, perhaps. And you did all these things, and that was the way it was. That was the state of the art then. The state of the art today is everything you do can make you more isolated from everybody else. You can buy almost anything you want online. Whether or not it's what it was advertised to be is another story, but you can buy almost anything you want online from a soulless internet site. The product information may or may not be right. If it's wrong, yeah, you can return it, but after you return it, you're still in the market for whatever it was that you were buying. So that's not necessarily easier. In your home today, which you didn't have 35 years ago, you had a lock on the door. You had a garage door, you opened it yourself. No Alexa. No smart TVs or anything like that was siphoning your information while you're watching it. So getting back to 35 years ago, you've bought a product, you've taken it home, you've tried it on or put it to use, whatever it was. Hopefully it worked out. If not, you returned it. But sometimes you did these things as a family. And the kids went with you maybe, or your wife, or significant other, husband, whatever the case may be. And you went shopping and it was an experience. Now it's point and click. I don't need it. I really don't need it. And I worked in the malls in those days, and I enjoyed the interaction of the customers. And we would joke around, and we would talk to each other, not necessarily about what we were selling here, but how was your day? Did you see there was an accident out front? Did you see that big car wreck out front, or whatever the case may be? Or what about the roads that they're always under construction? Have you noticed that? There's always same thing today. But you talk to each other. And talking to each other is not necessarily a bad thing, and we don't do enough of it anymore. I know myself, I try to interact with everybody. If I go for a burger at McDonald's, which is getting very expensive, by the way, I talk to the help there. We're all people. We're supposed to talk to each other. We're supposed to communicate. Getting back to 35 years ago, we had something called the Sunday Drive. Remember those? What was a Sunday Drive? Well, in my opinion, my experience, it was to get a bunch of us in a car, or maybe just one alone, or you and whoever. And maybe you took a little bit of a tour of an area that you don't normally go to. 35, 40 years ago, highways were starting to be in abundance, and whatever car you had, which didn't have a $600 a month car payment back then, you took a ride to someplace you didn't know. And maybe you looked around, and maybe it was something that you were thinking about moving to in the future. Or maybe you had relatives that were coming down and they were going to be staying in this area or that area. And you just went someplace for a nice ride. For me, driving in a car used to be very relaxing, something I enjoyed. Now, not so much. What else did we do 35 years ago? Well, I was a musician on the weekends, and people were always going to weddings and private parties, and they were looking forward to going. It was an event. And you would see them getting all dressed up for these events. And you'd sometimes, if there was a bridal party, you'd see them getting together in a room off to the side and them trying on their outfits for the first time and stuff like that. No, I wasn't in the room watching them try on their outfits, no. But I saw the excitement that they were having about going to a social function that they were looking forward to. And there was a whole bunch of things we were looking forward to in our future. And we talked about it. And we watched as technology started to creep in. And it's got to a point now where we can't think for ourselves. Whatever you watch on TV, on any of the major news channels, is probably not true. Who do you believe? What do you believe? I don't know about you, but to me it's very confusing. That's why I take my little trips to the past, where I knew what I was doing. I knew where I hoped to go. I knew where I wanted to be, hopefully. But I still had the ones I cared for along my side, hoping for the future together. I hope you enjoyed some aspects of this today. I'm asking the usual like, subscribe, comment. Please, by all means, comment. I'm always looking for good comments. And I will share them with you on the next video, or the one after that, or the one after that, should they come in. Like I said, this was a little bit out of the norm, and most of my videos, as you know, are unscripted and disjointed, as this one was. But I hope it gave you the opportunity to think about an alternative to the nonsense of today. If you do this, enjoy the trip. See you soon.